Welcome to the Cold Brew Chick podcast. I'm your chick, Rachel, a blogger and lover of all things cold brew. Join me as we discover and learn from some of the greatest minds in the cold brew industry. Not a day goes by without a cold brew by my side. Yay, it's so good to see you, Rosa. I feel like it's been...
You too.
Oh my gosh, when was Coffee Fest?
It's been like 6 months.
6 months?
Was it 6 months? August?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 5 months.
5 months still. I mean,
But
potato,
still,
potato, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. With COVID
Dang.
and everything like that, it's just, I'm so glad that I was actually able to go and it was still there. And, like the fact that it wasn't canceled or anything.
Yeah, that was crazy. It's nice to see some normalcy come back and then not really. It goes back and forth.
Right.
But I was so glad. That was such a great time, especially because I finally got to meet you after
Mhm.
trying your cold brews and have wanted to have you be on the podcast for so long. So I'm just excited for everyone to learn more about how sweet and wonderful not only you are, but your cold brew is. So just let's get into it. Tell everyone who you are, what is Be Kind Coffee, and how did you even get started into making a cold brew company?
So yeah, Be Kind started kind of on a whim, which was funny. I was a barista for 11 years, and I was talking to my husband after having our second child, our youngest, and I said, I really want to go back to work. I still want to work with coffee. That's not something that I wanted to ever stop doing, but I don't want to leave my house. Like I want to be able to be there for my kids. Like that was always the goal. And he just kind of nonchalantly said, "Well, how about you start that company that you always wanted to start?" And I'm okay, like that's a great idea. So it was kind of just a spur of the moment. Like I got my LLC, got my name, and the name was fun to come up with because I knew I wanted it to be a pun, um, and I wanted it to center around kindness. So I just kind of played with it and thought of different ways because my last name is Kane, so I was thinking like maybe something with Kane and kindness, and then I came up with the B because it's just cute, and then that gave me a little idea for a logo, and it just kind of grew from there. And then we started with our whole bean and ground coffee bags, and later on that year, because when I started my business, I didn't even have coffee ready to go. I started the business and was like, this is what I'm going to have eventually. And then later on, after I had my coffee, I was because there's so much coffee in this area, and I realized that if I'm going to stand out, I need to have something that stands out, that is different, that's worthy of standing out. Um, and nobody has good cold brew. I have checked. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna be the one. I'm gonna be the one to have the cold brew. I will take that crown. So I worked with a lot of different blends and coffee and syrups, trying to figure out what works best, extracts, syrups, and combination of the two, and what goes in the coffee itself with the like in the bag and what goes in the water, and just coming up with recipes that are so versatile and so just unique that they are not concentrated. You could drink it out of the bottle, as you know. And it's just that is something that I wanted to focus on. And my first coffee or my first cold brew flavor was honey bourbon. And that was just everyone freaked out. They loved it so much because it was made with real bourbon too. So I just boiled it down to get the alcohol out. And the syrup was just fantastic that went into it. And I was like, okay, I have something here. So since then, it grew and grew and grew. And I tried more flavors and more recipes to go with my coffee and into the cold brew. And yeah, it's exploded. And that was a year and a half or almost 2 years exactly
Wow. I'm curious, so you're a barista. What was kind of your thoughts and feelings about cold brew back then? Were you a cold brew fan back then? Not really into it? Was it something that grew?
every now and then. Like it was kind of like my second coffee on a hot day type of drink, like it wasn't as necessarily something that I drank often. Um, but that's also because a lot of the places that I worked didn't offer it. So I didn't actually all of my cold brew knowledge is self-taught. I didn't learn about cold brew at any job that I ever had.
Interesting. Even
Yeah.
at a coffee
Yeah.
shop, or they just not into it?
They didn't even offer it.
Wow. Where are you from again? I know you said your area didn't have any cold
So
brew.
I live in the Pacific Northwest. So I live like in the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we love coffee up here. There's a ton of coffee, but I feel like just cold brew is not as big in the coffee culture up here. I don't know
Mhm.
why, but it's just, I mean, like most small coffee shops offer it, and obviously we have Starbucks, but yeah, I feel like that it's not that like we only really get hot weather in the summer. So summertime people are kind of, like coffee shops will offer some cold brew, but it's not like a year-round thing and it's not really like advertised.
Interesting. Maybe
Right.
it is weather related. I just assumed by this point that cold brew would be everywhere.
Right? I know
But you're
you'd
right in
think.
that. Yeah. But then I think about like here in San Diego, how it's been so big here, and you look at our weather, and I think of a couple times where I went to some parts of like the north or whatnot where it is colder, and yeah, and they didn't have cold brew when it was December, or they made it seasonal. So it's interesting to see that that's still happening. Wow.
Cold brew is absolutely a year-round drink. I don't care what anybody else
Thank
says.
you. So you started with the beans and then you went to cold brew. And when you were going to create a cold brew, what was kind of your thought process? Was there a specific flavor that you wanted? Is there a specific type of cold brew that you like? Kind of what were you initially going for as you started to develop your flavors?
Nothing too sweet because the cold brew that I had up until that point, most of it was from Starbucks. And as you know, Starbucks coffee is very sweet and has a tendency to be bitter. So my idea for my cold brew was just basically the complete opposite of that. I wanted it to be sweet, but not too sweet and go down like silk. Like I wanted it to just be so smooth, just like my coffee beans are. So yeah, that's when I decided on the perfect ratio between the, purified water and the coarse grounds themselves and yeah, just not making sure that it wasn't going to be too sweet because I like the flavor, but I don't want it to be overpowering where you can't taste the coffee itself.
And I noticed that you really highlight that with your cold brew now because on your bottles, on the label, right, you have the beans that you use, the flavor, but then you also highlight it's only, if I remember correctly, 3.8 grams of sugar per serving, which as a dietitian, that stood out to me right away because we're always talking about, reducing your added sugar intake and whatnot. So I want to get into how you developed your flavors because anytime you add flavor to cold brew, right, it's usually going to be syrup or it's going to be with immersion. And what's been so impressive with your cold brews is how flavorful they've been with such a minimal amount of sugar. And so I'm so curious to know, is it all just syrups and extractions? Do you do some immersions? How are you able to get so much flavor into that cold brew with so little sugar?
So all of the above. I have there's syrups, there are sugar-free syrups, there are extracts and immersions, and usually the extracts and immersions go in with the coffee beans themselves. I put everything in a bowl, mix it up, so that way it's really embedded into that coffee. So that way when it's slow roast, when it's slow brewing, for the cold brew, it's really taking that flavor from the coffee, from the actual coarse coffee itself. But I use a lot of organic and I do a lot of local. Like anytime there's honey, it's always from a local farm um, up here in the Northwest. And I like supporting small. So anytime I can support small syrup companies, I will. Um, try not to. So I try not to do artificial flavors like Splenda and stevia, even though I know that they're like the more like better alternatives to regular sugar. I try not to use a whole lot of them just because I don't know people's sensitivity to things like that. Um, but yeah, I like all organic and all natural ingredients.
And then when creating your coffee blend, how did you determine which beans to use? Because I think you mentioned Central and South American beans. And so was it just kind of a lot of trial and error? Was there kind of a blend you already knew you liked just from drinking previous coffee and what you look for in a cold brew? Just how did you even develop that blend? Because blends can be tricky, right? It can,
Oh, definitely.
and it always changes too, right? You're never going to have the
Oh my
same
gosh, so much. Yeah, because
beans.
the farms change all the time, and with weather on this on said farms, are always a monopoly. But I so what I like to do is take my favorites. Yeah, so my favorite coffee is from Costa Rica and Brazil. Those are always kind of what whenever I buy like someone else's coffee, that's kind of always what I tend to go for, just because it is my favorite. So that is what the most of Buzz and Mariola, my our two coffees. That is what it is mostly, and then it has a little bit of Colombian and a little bit of Guatemalan into the blends too. But I love Brazilian, and Costa Rican is my favorite. So that was what I kind of steered towards, because I think that Costa Rican definitely has a tendency to be the smoothest coffee, just in my experience. And that's what I really wanted to hold on to for the cold brew.
Yeah, I feel like I see Brazil cold brews a lot, but I don't see Costa Rican cold brew used a ton. I've seen it before, but it's not as popular, I find, which is weird because it does make a great cold brew.
It really does, especially in the dark roast.
Ooh, now you're talking. So you created your first flavor, the honey bourbon. And since then, I mean, what's so cool about you too is you've created a lot of different unique holiday flavors as well. For the Christmas time and for Halloween, you had such unique and delicious flavors. I really have to emphasize the delicious here because they were so good. And so, how did this creation come out? Have you always been creative when it comes to drinks? Was it just inspiration from previous experiences or recipes? Just kind of how did you get ideas for all these different flavors?
So it's going to sound cliche, but literally everything around me inspires me. So I will be watching a show with my daughter. I'll be going out and listening to music in my car, and something like a lyric in a song or something that they say in a movie or anything will inspire me, like, oh, that would make a really cool drink, or like a color, even a color palette will inspire me for a drink. Um, and yes, every place I have worked at, like as a barista, I have created specialty drinks. So I'm good at it. So there's something about just me being in a coffee environment. I will come up with coffee, cold brew, and cold brew recipes, latte and cold brew recipes, because it's what I love to do, and it is definitely a creative outlet for me.
So let's go through these flavors actually, because there are people that are listening that have maybe never heard of you or wondering what's actually
Right.
talking about with these flavors. Let's start with your Halloween ones because those were
Witch
really,
hazel.
really cool. So just take me through what were the flavors that you had for Halloween and how did you create those?
Okay, so for the Halloween flavors, I had pumpkin spice because I had pumpkin spice the first year and it just blew up. So I actually did a little bit different, um, flavor wise. It was the still same flavor, but I put more of the actual pumpkin spice in with the coffee, and then added some immersion, um, and a little bit of brown sugar, just to bring that natural sweetness in. And yeah, so the pumpkin spice is a staple. I love it. And the witch hazel was brand new, and that was a fun one to come up with, because witch hazel from Looney Tunes and from our childhood, was the witch who, in the woods from Looney Tunes. I was there was something on Facebook or Instagram or something, and I saw her, and she was like, only it was like some sort of millennial post, and I remember her, and I was like, that's witch hazel, and I'm like, well, hazel, obviously hazel's gonna have to be hazelnut. So I saved that name for a chocolate hazelnut, um, coffee liqueur flavor. So I added the coffee liqueur because I love two of my favorite flavors together are hazelnut and Kahlua. So I took that, non-alcoholic Kahlua flavor, added some organic cacao powder in with the beans, and then added some sugar-free hazelnut extract, and it was just so good.
So good.
I
I love
know.
hazelnut is my favorite, like I don't want to say coffee flavor, but like you know how there's like vanilla. hazelnut, mocha, the typical like
Yeah.
added coffee
Mm-hmm.
flavors. No,
Coffee.
hazelnut's my favorite. I love hazelnut coffee so much. So when I saw it was hazelnut,
There's
I got
something
so
about
excited.
hazelnut that complements coffee so well.
It does. Oh, it's
And then
just
bring chocolate into that, and it's perfect.
perfection. Oh,
Exactly.
that was so good. And then for Christmas, you also had two unique flavors this year as well.
I did. So I had to bring back some sort of peppermint. Every year, everybody wants peppermint back because I use organic peppermint extract. And as you know, it has that York peppermint patty take you to the top of a mountaintop feel. Every time you drink it, it has that crisp, this, whew. So I had to bring that back. But to add a little bit of softness to that brisk peppermint, I added white chocolate. And that just those two balanced each other out so well and complemented the coffee so well that that was the perfect Christmas in a bottle drink. And then of course gingerbread because I had to bring that like warmth flavor of hot gingerbread but not too spicy because ginger has such a tendency to be spicy. And I remember the first batch because I always make one batch for me and my husband to try, and then I'll like have a couple close friends that I'll get input on if I need it. But I always test it before I sell anything. And the first batch I did was a little heavy on the ginger, and I took a sip. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not going to be one of those immunity shots with the ginger turmeric like that. It was so gingery. I'm like, okay, we have to tone down the ginger. So it definitely takes some trial and error. But yeah, the gingerbread one was once I got it down because I added a little bit of cinnamon vanilla like honey cinnamon vanilla sticks into the coffee.
Mhm.
Oh man, so good.
Oh my gosh, all your cold brews are just so good. Oh, I want everyone to try them. How has the reception been for your cold brew too? Part of why I asked this is because, like, I know we talked about how in your area, cold brew it seems like isn't quite where you think it would be, but for the most part nationwide, right? Cold brew is so popular now, and it seems like everybody either is has a cold brew or is starting cold brew businesses or whatnot.
Or seeks
And so I'm
out
just kind
cold
of
brew.
that too.
Hmm.
And so with you, how has I can only imagine the reception has been amazing because your product is so fantastic. But how has it been within your area with the globes? Kind of what have you had any struggles with getting cold brew out there, or just kind of what have you noticed since starting your company?
Definitely, the reception for it has been just absurdly welcome. Everybody loves it, and I get a lot of feedback with flavors just about what people like more of. And people do like the sweet flavors, but definitely the warmer flavors that complement my coffee really well, like the pumpkin spice and the gingerbread and the cinnamon bun that I had, and things like that, are definitely the big like people really love like the brown sugary flavors. So it's nice to know kind of like what everybody wants, but that's also not going to limit me on what flavors I do put out because I have, as I said, everything inspires me. So my range is going to be really huge when it comes to recipes and flavors. Um, but I would say definitely it has been wildly accepted and just everyone loves it, especially my Disney flavors. And I'm coming out with a lot more this year.
Now you got me excited.
the
See, you
first
might be
Disney flavor, the first Disney flavor of the year is actually going to be by the end of the month.
it's gonna be what?
It's going to be launched by the end of the month.
Oh my gosh. Is this going to be, I know you did a Bayou one, I remember. The Main Street one
Main
too.
Street Bakery, yeah. So
Yeah.
that one was the first of the Disneyland series, and I have another Disneyland one coming out at the end of the year, and then I have like three or four Disney ones, Disney themed, through spring and summer.
See, I knew you were a Disney person too.
Definitely.
Awesome. I'm curious to know too, the other thing with your cold brews that is really cool and is you don't see a lot is they're shelf stable. So when you ship them, right, you don't, normally when I get cold brews, they're packaged in all of these ice, containers and, it's expedited shipping because you have to keep them cold. But yours, you don't
Right.
have to do that, which is, I'm sure,
Yeah. No,
huge because that's, Mhm.
especially because I offer local delivery. So on those hot summer days when I drop somebody's coffee off at their front door, they're at work, they're not home, whatever. It is able to sit out and not be in like a cooler and still be fine. As long as it gets put back in the fridge and enjoyed cold, it's fine. And that does definitely help me a lot.
Yeah. How are you able to make it shelf stable like that? Did you have to pasteurize it or did you have to add something?
So I mean, I didn't really add anything to it, but every time because it was more just like a trial and error. Like my coffee, there's something about it that even though it is a cold brew, when it gets down to room temperature or even a little bit warm, as long as it's chilled again, it doesn't lose any flavor or caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Something
That's
about your
really
magical
helpful.
beans.
Definitely comes in handy too when I'm shipping, as you said, because like you're in San Diego and I'm in Washington, so takes a long time to get to you. It takes like 2 or 3 days to get to you. So like it definitely has lost its, and I definitely package it well so that way it at least holds a little bit of chill. But even if it doesn't, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, from as a new business, that's a huge expense to have to go through that with the expedition and including all that stuff. So I'm sure that's
Yeah,
really
'cause
helpful too.
shipping is expensive, so it's helpful.
Hmm. So besides new flavors, what else is on the horizon for Be Kind? What ambitions or what are you hoping to do?
Um, so I am trying to get into more local grocery stores here. And so not only that, I want to have a plain cold brew available year round. That's something that I want to have happen, and be and have my seasonal flavored cold brews available too, and as well as bagged coffee. But I'm also going to be at a farmers market this season, serving cold brew on tap, which I'm really excited for too.
Ooh, are you going to do like your flavored cold brews on tap?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. In that case, are you going to rotate them or are you going to have like just like standard ones?
I'll probably do whatever I have available, and then I'll have like my bottles of other flavors or whatever I have, whatever else I'm offering at the time. And because I want to start offering plain year round, just because if somebody doesn't want flavors, that's fine. It
Hmm.
shouldn't
I
have
mean,
to be
they would
limited.
crazy not to, but
I know, right? I
twist,
mean, I don't know.
Well, actually, I should say, I mean, I usually do prefer black cold brew, but with yours, like yours is one of those rare cold brews where,
Something
like,
about it,
I'm,
right?
I'm sure I would love your original cold brew, and I will of course
Hmm.
try it. But you do your flavor so well, and again, like for me, the big reason why I don't drink a lot of flavored cold brews is I don't like the extra sugar. I don't like to drink my sugar. I'd rather eat it,
And you
right? I'd
could
rather eat
taste it.
chocolate.
That's the thing. When you take super sweet or flavored cold brew, you can like taste that separation of flavor and coffee. At least, you drink a lot of cold brew, so you know. But and that's what I really wanted to avoid, and that's why it took me probably a solid month of trying to figure out how I can avoid that from happening. Um, when I was first coming up with the cold brews, because I didn't want that taste on your teeth. You know what I mean? That like that really sugary taste left over. I wanted to be like that was a solid cold brew. That's what it was. Not flavored cold brew. It was a cold brew with a little added flavor. You know?
Yeah, because when you get to that point, it's like, is there even cold brew in this anymore? I wouldn't know because all I taste is sugar. You're like, nope. Yeah, I forgot to ask you too. So, what are you using to brew your cold brew? Do you have like special machines at home? Are you using bags? Like, what are you using?
I use Alto, the big
Hey,
5 gallon Alto. Yes, Alto. Yes, I got that, and it's been amazing being able to brew 5 gallons at a time. It saves on time and space, and it's perfect.
man, at this point, I feel like everyone's using Alto. It's very rare that I meet someone that doesn't. So, I'm glad to hear that you do.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, they're the best.
So the thing I want to ask you too is, being starting a small business, you're also a mom. You've got a lot going on. What are some of the I guess lessons that you've learned since starting Be Kind? Because some people that listen to the podcast are looking to start a cold brew business of some sort. And I think one of the things that people are always looking for is how do you avoid mistakes when you're starting a business. So in your case, now that you've done this for a little bit, what are maybe some lessons that you learned or some wisdom that you can impart onto others?
Definitely take one thing at a time. I would say don't overextend yourself. Make sure that you have enough of yourself for every aspect of your life. Your job isn't the only thing that needs you. Whether it's motherhood or, your spouse or a parent that needs, but like anything that's going on in your life needs you. So don't overextend. So definitely just take one thing at a time. If you're trying to do cold brew, do one batch at a time, and then if it doesn't work, then try again. Um, and don't ask for too many opinions. Like something that you want to do. I remember the first time I was designing a T-shirt, I asked my friends for advice because I was like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think?" Like just like you would, with asking people that you really value their opinion. Asking what they thought, and everything was conflicting. And I was just, okay, this is stressing me out. Like this is supposed to be a good thing that is now worrisome. So not asking advice, trusting your instincts, trusting your gut. Like, hey, do you like that? Is this something that you want to pin your business name on? Then do it. Then just go for it. And people are like you. People will like it. Don't ask for too many opinions. And that goes with flavors too, because a lot of people don't like coconut. I'm actually one of them. I don't really like coconut, but I'm still.
That's okay. That's okay.
Are we still friends, Rachel?
We're still friends. It's okay. But if you
But
would
I will
like to
always
make
come
a
up.
coconut cold brew, that would be okay too.
We had a coconut rum one last spring, and I'm gonna come up with another coconut one this year. And I'm gonna do it even though I don't like it because that's something that I know that goes really well with coffee. And I do trust my husband's opinion when he's gonna try it instead of me. I will try it and be like, okay, well, it's coconut, so I'd rather not. But yeah, so I would say those are my biggest like pieces of advice is just take one thing at a time. Success, like, and if you fail, that's not even a problem. Failure is part of success, and I have realized that with this business for sure. And not every recipe will go well with coffee. Like I have learned that for sure. Because I have a whole spreadsheet on my computer of a list of all my recipes that I've ever come up with in the history of time. And not all of them, like on paper, they sound great, but when you put them in with coffee, you're like, well, that didn't translate as well as I thought it did in my head. So just being able to like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's move on. Being able to just move on like that is definitely is a skill to learn in a business. And then just trusting your gut, doing what you want, trusting what you want to put your business name on is huge.
Yeah, those are all great tips. I think especially the fact that failure is a part of success, right? Because fear of failure is something I definitely struggle with. But it's a part of the game. You got to deal with it. And then I love that you mentioned, when you're looking for inspiration for your recipes that you look everywhere around you, right? And I think people forget that you can get inspiration from TV shows and movies, books, whatnot. But what would your tip be for someone, say for example, they have an idea for a recipe, but they just have nowhere to start? What could they do to start? Maybe think about what ingredients they might want to try. Because that's something I struggle with is I think, oh yeah, this
Right.
would be a great cool brew. This would be good. But I am not a mixologist at all, so I
Mhm.
wouldn't know where to start. So what would you recommend?
So I would say if you're trying to think, like if you're trying to come up with a recipe and you have like this one idea, I would definitely think about baking. When it comes to coffee, think about baking because like you have your cinnamon strudel, you have your blueberry muffins, you have, things that are already set and like that's the recipe. Think about that and like a cinnamon bun. You have your brown sugar, your vanilla, and your cinnamon. That would be delicious in a coffee. Things like that. I feel like baking is such a huge part of coming up with off the wall coffee recipes. And if it can bake, it can be translated to coffee most of the time.
I like that because I like to bake. So now I'm
There you
thinking like
go.
chocolate chip
See?
cookies, just all those sweet treats.
Exactly. Yeah, and like, well, my Main Street Bakery was basically a chocolate chip cookie with brown sugar in it, like with a little bit of brown sugar cinnamon in it, and
Mhm.
that's why everyone loved it so much, is because it was such a warm and like familiar flavor, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I like that too. I like really touching on familiarity with coffee, and I think maybe that's why, when people first start cold brew or coffee, they like, the chocolate flavored, or I should say chocolate flavored, but the coffees that pull chocolate flavors out, right? Because it's a very
Right.
familiar taste. It's what we like, it's what we're used to, versus once again to kind of more brighter coffees, it's a little bit of a journey to get there, right? Because we're just not quite used to it. So I like that you touch on that familiarity and flavors that people love and enjoy, and then adding
Hmm.
to the fact that you do have the reduced sugar, it's just the icing on the cake.
Exactly right.
So where can people find you now that I have hyped you up and people are going to try this? Where can people grab your cold brew?
BeKindCoffee.com. Make sure it's the double E. So it is a really simple, easy, user-friendly website with free shipping over $45, which is easy to do with, with on the shop. But
Mhm.
yeah, nationwide shipping. I haven't shipped my cold brew, but I have shipped my coffee overseas. I have one on its way to Norway right now.
Whoa.
I know. So, I mean, if someone wants to try, if someone is listening to this and is not in the country and wants to try my cold brew, I could definitely talk to them about maybe coming up with that packaging to actually keep it colder longer. But yeah, because that's definitely something that I want to do on the bucket list. I want someone in a different country to enjoy my coffee.
Yeah. And then you're on Instagram at Be Kind Coffee.
But yeah, at Vegan Coffee and Facebook too, I am, but I'm not as active on Facebook. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and vegancoffee.com.
You do a great job with your Instagram too of really highlighting your cold brews and doing themed posts and recipes and whatnot. I
Oh,
feel
the
like I would
recipes
do
are fun.
something.
See, and that's because I love to come up with recipes. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make lattes. And I love iced coffee. And I think that people like seeing the iced coffee being made more than hot coffee, just because
Mhm.
you can like see it being built in the cup instead of just like looking inside of a mug that you can't see through. I think it's a little different. But yeah, it's so fun to come up with reels like that for recipes.
And you get so creative with it too and everything. Oh, I love
Yeah.
seeing what you come up with.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Rosa. I'm so excited to try. You got me all excited for your new flavors, especially
Oh my
the
gosh.
Disney one coming up. You're gonna maybe have to sneakily tell me what it is.
Oh, I
But
will.
I just love watching your journey. I love seeing the creativity that you do. And again, I love the fact that you're creating delicious cold brews with less sugar. That's my dream for all cold brews to be like that. So please
See,
continue to do
that
what
was
you
mine
do.
too. I will. 100% I will do that.
Awesome. Thank you.